In a competitive world, average won't cut it. The Success Launch Point shows you how to stand out, deliver massive value, and rise above the crowd. With on-demand courses, expert coaching, and a community focused on growth, you'll accelerate your career and your paycheck. It's time to level up. Check out modernobserver.com/launchpoint.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And someone my age kind of remembers, what was it, the song Please Come to Chicago, about riots during the DNC convention back in 1968. Sometimes, as they say, history repeats itself. So we have the National Guard or federal troops going into Chicago. And then in Portland, we have federal troops basically going after Antifa. And what's really wild, Dr. Lopkin and sad, is that Portland used to be like a mecca along with Seattle. I mean, just like world-class cities. This is the place to go. 30 years of unbridled Democratic leadership, they're becoming shitholes. And in fact, people are scared to go out because every night Antifa lunatics are out there doing their shit. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, that's not just Portland and Seattle. It's the entire West Coast that this has happened to.
Agreed.
But
it used to be the West Coast. The West Coast, I'll still say, I still stand on what I've said. It used to be God's country, San Francisco, Portland. I mean, amazing, like God, like the most beautiful places, cities in the world.
Yeah, at one point, that was the goal of everybody, was to go to the West Coast, and now people can't leave there fast enough. It is absolutely
But you mean, Dr.
amazing.
Lopkin, no, I agree. I'm sorry, but I'm just interjecting one thing. Again, if it happened over 100 years or whatever, like maybe even the Rust Belt, but it's like 30 years. It's not that long ago that it was awesome.
No, in the scheme of things, it's not that long ago. I think they basically flipped the script probably during the first Bush administration when the Democrats were still out in the wilderness. They were looking for a way back, and the West Coast decided they were going to go extremely to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And
agreed.
You had the Clinton years where it was good for Democrats. California, Oregon, Washington, they all benefited from the Clinton administration, but the Clinton administration was more centrist than the current Democratic Party, and not by a little.
By a lot.
Then you've got, the Bush years, they kept doubling down, going further and further to the left, which was eventually embraced by the Obama administration. And from that point on, it was really just a snowball gaining momentum, getting bigger and bigger. And now it is an absolute disgrace what they have let happen to these cities.
It's interesting you say that when they were out in the wilderness. I 100% agree. But it also goes back even 40 years ago with the Reagan Revolution. The Democrats were out in the wilderness.
Yes.
And at that time, so what's the point? Why am I mentioning that? Not just for histrionics, but what the Democratic modus operandi is. When you're out in the wilderness, Yeah, the Republicans reinvent themselves, but the Democrats are so addicted to power, they need to see where they can put their tentacles in. And what they did during Reagan was the judicial system, and education. And by the way, they did a heck of a job, didn't they?
Yes,
But that
they
is the
did.
truth, by the way.
Yes, they did. They did an amazing job taking over these areas. And now it's coming back to bite them because it has become blatantly obvious that what they did not benefit the people in these areas. In fact, just a little while ago, an interview with Democratic gubernatorial candidate Katie Porter went viral because she just blew up during an interview when the reporter from CBS actually asked her, "So, how do you intend to reach out to Trump supporters and GOP voters to get them to support you?" And she wouldn't even consider the question. She went off. How dare they ask that? And there's a good chance
Actually,
that,
let me interject something. I think I saw it and I think you're spot on. But let me ask the great doctor. I think her campaign's over, by the way. But isn't it also a bigger issue that we probably won't get into right now and probably shouldn't, a changing of the media landscape, because these people are so used to puffball questions like, what kind of pancakes did you have for breakfast, and did you use syrup, that any little, let's say, below the surface questions is unacceptable, and they're not used to it, quite frankly. You agree, Dr. Locke?
yeah, there has been a turnaround, and we'll actually talk about some of that later on, where both parties are actually having to answer questions again. Now, the Republicans have always had to answer questions, but now in this turnaround, you're actually seeing the Republicans push back and say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. How, why are you even asking that? Here's your answer. And that's where the difference comes in. When the Republicans are pushing back, they're actually providing the answer to the question and pointing out how ridiculous it is because everybody should know this already. The Democrats aren't doing that. They're pushing back and they're throwing hissy fits.
Yes, I think one thing about just interjecting a little thought about the Republicans, I think it's an expansion of the media and the exponentially lesser impact on corporate media. So what do I mean by that? I'm saying when you have one date and you're going to the prom, you kowtow to that person. You go, can I get you another slice of cake? But when you have 20 dates that you can possibly go on, you're not as knee jerk to make sure you bend to every one of their demands. So I think with the new landscape of media, that Republicans can push back, because if they blow something up, they blow something up. It's not as critical. And people are getting news and information from other places. So the stranglehold is gone. And I agree with you about Democrats is now, and I think it has to do also in part by the fracturing of media, that now media is holding them a little bit more to the fire than they used to, and they cannot handle it. Correct, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, they haven't been able to handle it for quite a while because they have no real experience, with the possible exception of the oldest of the Democrats. The younger Democrats have no idea how to handle a real interview because they've never had to. And speaking as a someone who was a reporter for a long time, there's a lot of people out there that cannot handle even a friendly interview. When I would do weekend pieces where I would be interviewing artists, or basically the front of the weekend section, what's going on around town. When I would do interviews with those, there were a number of times where I literally had to lead somebody by the hand to make them comfortable enough to withstand the interview. So it is a skill that needs to be practiced, and the Democrats haven't had that practice in a long time because the media has kowtowed to them for so long. And now you're seeing in Chicago, in Portland, that now the Democrats aren't the end all and be all. There's a new sheriff in town. And let's face it, a lot of this, and we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, a lot of what's happened with the media fracturing, with the Democratic fracturing, and certainly with the sheer power of the MAGA movement and the Trump administration, all were basically a reaction to the abject corruption that went on during the Obama and Biden administrations.
Yes, but I agree, a part of a bigger picture that isn't the Democratic Party being exposed for the radical, um, draconian, and corrupt power by any measure that was always behind the veil, but now new documents are coming out and other things, and they're forced to defend their positions, which they never were, like defending Antifa and other crazy nutcase situations like Chicago. Um, don't you think that's also part of it?
It is part of it because what it is especially during the Obama years, the Democrats basically ruled the party themselves with an iron fist. Nobody spoke out about the party, nobody broke ranks. And now all of that is coming out. And since they do not have leadership anymore, you've got Joe Manchin coming out with his book where he literally says it was important for America for the Democrats to lose the 2024 election because all they were interested in was power. You've got Schumer actually made some sort of cryptic comments. The Senate just a few hours ago voted yet again to keep the government closed. And Schumer made some comments basically indicating that he's getting frustrated with the Democratic senators because he knows the Democrats are going to take the blame for this, but there are too many Democrats now who are falling in line behind AOC, and they don't want the government open for some reason.
Well, there's always predictions about the midterms. I know it's a little, far away. Got that, but I don't know. I'm a pretty good observer of the political landscape, and I do agree that the power is being increasingly concentrated in nutcases like AOC and Bernie. And yeah, it might resonate on the coast, but in normal America, I'm not even going to talk about middle America, normal America, it's crazy. And I think maybe the best gift that could happen, the worst present for occurrence for New York City, but the best maybe for the Democratic Party, because the more the Democratic Party is painted for what they actually are, the better for Republicans. And there are radical, socialist, anti-American, and the list can go on, but I won't bore our listeners. But it is a fact. And the whole thing about moderate Democrats, yeah, okay, and there are pterodactyls out there too. Got to look behind rocks.
All right, no, see, I'm going to push back on you on that because there are moderate Democrats out there, and we're starting to see them mobilize right now within the Democrats. Even there are reports from the New York City suburbs that real estate is going through the roof because realtors in these areas are taking calls from Manhattan. People are already planning on leaving if Mondavi wins. The police department, which is already short-staffed, is now about to have a record number of retirements because the police are refusing to serve under Mondami. So you're starting to
Yeah, but
see.
that's fine about the general populace, but the Democratic Party, and you've talked about this, and I think we have a schism on this. But yeah, when if you're a Democrat, you can hide. You could have hid 5 years ago, but right now the cat's out of the bag, and you are a part of a socialist radical party. So you could say, yeah, there were moderate Nazis. I don't really think so. Right now, it's so obvious what the Democratic Party stands for. So just by being a member of that party, you are now part of the club. Congratulations.
No, see, again, I have to completely disagree with that because most of the Democrats, particularly the moderate ones, were Democrats before the socialists came and tried taking over. So they are the Democrats. It's the socialists who invaded the party and are doing their best to do the takeover, not the other way around. It's not that the socialists were always hiding there. The
Well,
Democrats
it's
were a
also
very moderate party
where are
up
the
until
voices?
Obama.
Where are the voices of these so-called Democratic moderates? It's crickets. They don't say shit. I've never seen them, heard them say anything, and it's guilt by association because they're doing jack you know what, and their parties. It was a radical fringe started by Bernie, and then gotten bigger with AOC and the Squad, but they're a cowardly party. I hear no dissension, and they vote in lockstep a la the shutdown.
Yeah, the votes are shameful. There's no
There you go.
questioning that. But
There's shameful.
you're starting to see the cracks get wider and wider because, and it goes back to what we were talking about, the schism with the media. Now everybody sees them for what they are. So unless you've been totally brainwashed, which unfortunately there are people out there that just believe everything the Democratic Party
So you're
puts
talking
out.
about Harvard graduates, correct?
Harvard
Joking.
graduates, Yale
There you go.
graduates,
There you go. There you go.
Cornell graduates. There was a story just the other day that a Cornell professor came out and said, yes, since the crackdown on the Palestinian protests, anti-Semitism at these colleges has actually gotten worse. So yeah,
Why is that?
they're still out there. It's because they're going underground. They're tormenting people, but they're not getting the attention because it's not this big group. They're doing it on individual levels. So, yeah, the problem is still out there. And again, just like the socialists did under Obama, they're sneaking in. The anti Semitism is sneaking in. But it's harder and harder for them to stay hidden. When you've got Bill Maher every week going off about how the Democrats are going to lose the midterms, and let's face it, by no stretch of the imagination is he a MAGA Republican.
Not at all.
You
But he
know
has half a brain, even though he's a
exactly.
Cornell grad. Yes.
Yeah, you've got
But yeah, no,
you've
it's
got
really, and it gets.
Kamala.
Go ahead.
You've got Kamala Harris making the problem worse every time she opens her mouth.
A
You've
genius.
You've got James Carville berating the Democrats every chance he gets. So you've got the split between the traditional Democrats. I don't even want to call them moderate anymore. The traditional Democrats and the Democratic Socialists, who don't actually identify as Democrats except when it's time to run for office.
True. Now you talk about the corruption in the Democratic Party. Shed a little more light on the new documents that have surfaced about the Biden family, Ukraine. Basically, let's cut the what. The Biden family, Uncle Joe, his whole circle of family and friends are the biggest grifters in the history of American politics.
Yeah, in 2019, the CIA was prepared to release a report about the Ukrainian government investigating the Biden family's connections to corrupt Ukrainian companies. And as vice president, Joe Biden slapped it down, made sure that the report was classified and never released. Both the report and the emails that Biden sent saying that, yes, this has to stay hidden, we cannot let this out. All of that has now been declassified and the public can see it. So now, the math on this blew me away because I was thinking about this. The investigation that the CIA had a report on was exactly what Donald Trump was looking at when the Democrats impeached him for it, because they said, oh, he was going after his political opponents. The impeachment was in 2019. The Democratic primaries didn't even start until February 2020. How far in advance did the Democratic Party decide that Joe Biden was going to be the nominee, no matter what the American public wanted?
Shocking. Wouldn't that be shocking for you? Never happens in the Democratic Party because they stand for democracy. Don't you understand, Dr.
Of course. Well, again, it's been widely said, even among Democrats at this point, that the Democrats have not had a presidential primary since 2008, when Obama won the primary.
Details. Come on. Yeah, I hear you. No, it's actually comical, and they always say, when they say this, our democracy depends on this. It's like you said, you haven't had an election, okay, in like how long? Jesus, it's unbelievable. Speaking of unbelievable, go ahead.
Meanwhile, James Comey has been indicted. He was arraigned in court today for lying to Congress about the investigation into the Crossfire Hurricane. So all of this stuff is coming out. I don't think there's anywhere the Democrats can hide anymore.
And that's why they're becoming increasingly knee-jerk and scared. And again, relating to Uncle Joe, we've already talked about this, so we're not going to spend any time, but I've never seen a president, and again, going from, okay, maybe looked on a little bit favorably, whatever, to irrelevant. Like, not even, like, I don't know, in history, he might not even be mentioned. It's just, I've never seen anything like it.
No, I don't think he's irrelevant. Gerald Ford is irrelevant as a president. Biden is going to be reviled for this stuff. He is an embarrassment now. Irrelevant is people just don't even talk about it. Biden destroyed not just his reputation, the reputation of the Democratic Party, the reputation of Barack Obama. The damage he did will keep him relevant, but not in a way any Democrat ever wanted to see.
Fantastic. You know, it is philosophically, sometimes be careful what you wish for. Obama and some others wanted Uncle Joe, the moron, to be president so they could pull the strings. And, sometimes shit blows up in your face, doesn't it, Dr. Lobkin?
Yes, it does. Be careful what you wish for.
I love that. Sometimes old adages are the best because they're true. And you talk about the media. Maybe you can shed some more light on Paramount and CBS. It's changing fortunes.
Yeah, CBS News is undergoing a massive change. And this might have actually led to what happened with Katie Porter, because that was a CBS reporter that asked her the questions that made her blow up. But Paramount Skydance, which, Skydance just bought Paramount in a major merger, and they are not kowtowing to the Democratic Party. Paramount has just purchased the Free Press. Now, I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with the Free Press, but you might not know the background. Barry Weiss, who is the founder of the Free Press, was a columnist at the New York Times, and she quit the New York Times because she was being bullied for not kowtowing to the far left narrative that they wanted to say. She left, she founded the Free Press, which focused on centrist reporting.
Things are not going to be good at CBS.
Yeah, both center right and center left. That was where the Free Press focused. Well, Paramount just bought the Free Press, and Barry Weiss is being named editor-in-chief of CBS News, which means every news decision comes from her. And not only did they bring in more centrist people to run this, they changed the corporate structure. So Barry Weiss, unlike former editor-in-chiefs like Norah O'Donnell, will not be answering to the head of CBS. She is answering directly to David Ellison, the head of Paramount Skydance. So she is going to have basically complete autonomy as far as CBS is concerned.
You think there's some maybe more increased antiperspirant sales in the CBS boardroom?
Oh,
probably so.
Liberal reporters, liberal pundits have been beside themselves since the word of this started leaking out. It started leaking out last week. The announcement was officially made Monday morning, but all weekend, liberal pundits and liberal reporters have been up in arms about how this is going to keep them from fighting Trump, and it's going to keep them from fighting for democracy. It's like, really? How does covering up Biden's mental faculties represent fighting for democracy?
Well, maybe you don't have a Harvard degree in journalism. If you went back to school, you'd find out that answer, wouldn't you, Dr. Lopkin?
I suppose so, because Lord knows what I learned in journalism classes bears no resemblance to what these reporters do.
Probably not. By the way, I thought Norah O'Donnell was right down the middle, but I guess I was wrong. Kidding. Finally, your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin. I've seen some articles and even some YouTube segments on, and these aren't the whack jobs with purple hair not being very qualified. The job market is extremely tight, and especially for college graduates. Your thoughts? I mean, the only thing I'm thinking is it a combination of economy plus technology, or you tell me, you're the doctor.
It's a combination of a lot of things. Let's talk the economy first. Businesses are still very concerned about the costs of the tariffs. So because they don't want to overspend, they're cutting back on hiring. They're not firing yet, fortunately, but they're not expanding because there's still uncertain. There's still a lot of uncertainty regarding the tariffs and the economy as a whole. It just came out today that the Fed is actually split, with half of the Fed governors saying they need to have 2 more half-point drops in the interest rate before the end of the year. And of course, Powell is not part of that group. So that could cause more damage to the economy if we don't get those interest cuts. So businesses are in a very precarious place economically because the uncertainty, while there's always a certain level of uncertainty, now it's going through the roof. So they're being very careful about what they spend. So they're not hiring as much anymore. They've cut back on that. Then you've got technology. The explosion in AI has cut the need for as many workers because you don't need so many people to code because AI can do the bulk of the coding and then you bring in people to perfect the code. And speaking about AI coding, just to be perfectly clear, yes, AI is capable of writing content. It's capable of writing code. That doesn't mean that it's turning out a good product. So we still need people to oversee it. We need editorial staff to check the content. We need programmers to check the code. But businesses can make do with a lot fewer people because AI is doing the first steps and they just bring in the people to polish it up and add the expertise. So that's
Yeah.
so that's a big factor in what's going on in the job market. And then finally, what we saw over the last several years, the college degree is just about useless. And unfortunately,
Well, let
the
me interject with one thing. I
go
want
ahead.
your opinion again. Just shed a little more light on that because I do agree with you, but you don't think that's like earth shattering, the once holy grail of upward mobility? And I even saw an ad for a college that had basically talked about what we've talked about for years about the buffet of skills that you can get and blah, blah, whatever. No sense belaboring that point, but I think that's a huge thing. And unfortunately, isn't a lot of recent college grads are going to get a real comeuppance
Oh,
with 200
abs-
grand in debt?
absolutely. Because what has happened now, part of this is the college's own fault because what they're teaching is not preparing, and actually it goes beyond college. The same thing applies to high school and junior high school. American students are not learning the skills that they need to thrive in today's job market because for the last 15, 20 years,
I'd say
education,
30.
the education system was all about, well, we're not training them to go get a job. We want them to explore. We want them to learn different things. But what they taught them was completely irrelevant and did not prepare anybody for the real world. So you have that problem where you've got a lot of students completely unprepared for the job market. Unfortunately, there are programs out there that did prepare job seekers for the real world. Jobs in technology, jobs in manufacturing, things like this. But at this point, the college degree as a whole has gotten such a bad rap that they're being tarred with the same brush that the Ivy League is.
I actually agree with that. I used to be enamored with degrees, and now that and like 50 cents will get you a couple. It doesn't have the shit. In fact, there's a great YouTube video. College grad 1950. They go to an interview. Have a seat, son. Wow, you must be. And then now, hey, yeah. Fill out the form. We'll get back to you. Yeah. So I think that is certainly more than apropos. But I also think it's the college's fault. I think it's a disgrace unless you totally have free access to information to put people through a art history degree and rack up $250,000 in debt. In the old days, it used to be you had that stamp of a college degree, and all you need is that first job, blah, 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 and that could happen. But now that's not happening. So you're stuck with a $250,000 debt in a degree that is absolutely meaningless. And I think that's
Well,
abhorrent.
it is a terrible situation, and certainly the colleges bear the brunt of the fault, but the students themselves also need to take a level of responsibility because there were, over the past several graduating classes, polls taken, what job are you trying to get? Where do you want to go with your degree? And there was an enormous outpouring that people wanted to be social media influencers.
Mm,
They wanted to do product placement. And
beautiful.
unfortunately, it was a minority of the college students that actually wanted to create something real, wanted to build something. They just wanted to because what was happening, and it's happening a little less now, but it was big over the last 10, 15 years, is that the 30 or 40 social media influencers that were bringing in millions of dollars got all the attention, and nobody paid attention to the 2.5 million social media influencers that couldn't make ends meet, that couldn't pay their bills. So people started believing, oh, this is an easy job. I can do this and make millions. And it wasn't true. It was a house of cards, and now that has fallen apart.
Yes, it's like getting back to like the 1970s or something when someone was effing up their lives. "Oh, what are you doing for a living?" "I'm writing a novel." That's about that's about equal to being a social influencer in terms of your chances of making it. But our listeners can make an impact, can't they, Dr. Lopkin?
Yes, they can. Let us know what your thoughts are. What do you want to hear us talk about? What do you want to get dissected and take a look behind the headlines? Let us know at xvadio.com/connect. You can also message us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at the Carnivore Radio webpage, xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Great show. See you next week.
We'll see you then.